You see, I saw this tweet yesterday from a popular handle. The writer wrote, "The events of January 15, 1966 is happening again in Nigeria and people are not noticing. The North lost more political and military officers, followed by the West, and the Igbos lost none. They instigated and led a military coup and protected their own. And today, they have instigated a national protest and refused to participate."
Why you go dey talk like that?
So this tweet generated quite a lot of reactions. Even Dele Momodu reacted to it, telling the propagators to face what is facing them and leave the Igbo man alone. Now, why am I reacting to the tweet and making this video? Because if you don't challenge a lie, it may begin to appear like the truth. Our people say that until animals have their own historians, that the story of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. If you do not lick your lips, Hamatan will help you and lick it. Now let us lick the lip together and address the issue. The January 1966 coup, was it actually an Igbo agenda? Was it actually a plan by the over-ambitious Igbos to take over the country?
Na lie.
Now, first things first. In one of my previous videos, I told you how the Igbos emerged as one of the most relevant groups in the formative stages of Nigeria.
Yes.
As at 1950, they had the highest number of post-secondary graduates in Nigeria. And following independence in 1960, they occupied 45% of management positions in the civil service. And it was estimated that it may reach 60% by 1966.
Really?
They also occupied more than 50% in Nigerian Railway Authority, Nigerian Ports Authority, Nigerian Foreign Service, so on and so forth.
God gave it to me.
And this was the first point of envy. Other major ethnic groups began to see them as being over-ambitious and being a threat. But it was not just in the civil service that they led. They also had majority of the numbers in the military.
Are you telling me the truth?
Because at the time, the Igbos had the basic education needed for enrollment.
You get it?
Now, following the first election, which was obviously manipulated by the British, and power was handed over to the Northern People's Congress, who were supposed to protect British interests, confidence in genuine democracy was compromised in Nigeria from the very beginning. And the military were watching. Now the MPC came into power and they made Northern interest a priority over national interest. And they did not hide it, they came out open. It was their policy. In fact, one of the interviews granted by Sir Ahmadu Bello, who was the most prominent figure in the MPC then, this was what he had to say about the Igbos.
Well, the Igbos are more or less the type of people whose desire is mainly to dominate everybody. If they go to a village, to a town, they want to monopolize everything in that area. If you put them in a labor camp as a laborer, within a year they will try to emerge as headman of that camp, and so on. Well, in the past, our people were not alive to their responsibilities, because you can see from our northernization policy that in 1952, when I came here, there weren't 10 northerners in our civil service here. Then I tried to have it northernized, and now all important posts are being held by northerners. In actual fact, what it is a northerner first.
Now, with this type of mentality, how do you think you can lead a multi-ethnic country and expect to succeed? Now, the policy was get some people off their positions, replace them with people from the desired ethnic group, whether they have the qualification or not. And this culture of nepotism, tribalism, favoritism, social injustice and corruption was not a good foundation for any government to be built. And the military opened their cup and we are watching. And in the early 60s and 70s, military coup was very rampant in Africa. In fact, every African country experienced a military coup apart from Cameroon.
Must learn a lesson.
Now, the census crisis of 1964 happened. The census was stage managed. Figures were inflated to favor a region to get more resources at the expense of others. And the military were watching. Now, the Western election crisis of 1965 happened, where it was reported that the premier then, Akintola, lost the election, but refused to concede power, which led to crisis. But the prime minister then sided him and rather arrested Obafemi Awolowo and charged him with treason. It was during that crisis that Wole Soyinka was adjudged to have held up a radio presenter and forced him to remove Premier's speech and replaced it with another speech.
Look at my face.
It was one crisis after another, and the military were watching. If the leadership we had then were sensitive enough, they would have known that the government they were running was standing on one leg, dancing go-go-gongo. Hey! But our people say that a puppy that has been destined to die does not perceive the smell of feces.
Funny people.
So when the military now struck in the early stages of 1966, a military that had prominently Igbo soldiers, who do you think are likely to lead the military coup? The Igbos. But there is more to this Igbo agenda that they attached to that coup, because one of the major coup plotters was Yoruba, Major Adewale Adeboyega, who now came out in 1981 and wrote a book, Why We Struck, where he explained the reason behind the coup. Explained that there was no ethnic group that was singled out, that they just wanted to put out an underperforming government at the time.
You get it?
He said that one of the major reasons for the coup was to reinstate Obafemi Awolowo as the premier of the West. Do you think the Igbos will lead the coup just to reinstate a man who is not from their ethnic group? I doubt. Even the leader of the coup, Chukwuma Kaduna Nzogu, was only Igbo by name.
Really?
He was born in Kaduna, raised in Kaduna, schooled in Kaduna, spoke fluent Hausa, and identified as a Northerner.
You get it?
So if Igbos wanted to lead an Igbo agenda, is it a man with a mixed ethnicity that is supposed to lead it? I still doubt. Now let's talk about the casualties.
I could have
The Northern Emir then, the Prime Minister, the Premier of the West, and then the Finance Minister, Prince Festus Okotie Ebo, were the major targets.
Continue.
And the main Igbo leaders at the time, Nnamdi Azikiwe, was not even in the country. Then Michael Okpara, who was the Premier of the East, was not part of the election crisis of the West. So are the coup plotters supposed to track him down and kill a man who was not part of the crisis just because they want to balance the killing? I'm still wondering. Now, in the part of the military, do not let anybody fool you into believing that Igbos did not have any casualties. They had.
You get it?
Prominent among them was Lieutenant Colonel Otto Unegbe. It was reported that this man was so prominent in the army that he had the keys to the armory and refused to surrender it to the coup plotters, and it cost him his life. So he was loyal to the government of the MPC and paid dearly for it. But when they talk about people who paid the supreme price in the cause of nation building, they hardly mention his name, because mentioning his name will now make this idea of an Igbo coup null and void.
We don't know why it's going
Even
on.
Agui Ironsi, who was the most top-ranking military officer at the time, was earmarked for elimination. But he got wind of it, mounted a resistance, and broke the coup, and ended up emerging as our first military head of state. Now, am I saying what these guys did is good? No. You don't overthrow an elected government and you don't go around killing people. But why do we allow the reckless activities of a few people to make us project the Igbo in negative light since 1966 till now? Now, 6 months after this coup that brought Agui Ironsi as head of state, northern officers went on a counter coup in retaliation, where Ironsi was killed, His friend Fajuyi was killed, and over 300 officers and men were murdered.
I could have killed a lot of people.
And if it had stopped there, we would have taken it as maybe one of those tragic incidents in nation building, but it went beyond that. Igbos on the street were attacked, rounded up, murdered, injured, maimed, their shops looted. It was reported that over 3,000 Igbos were either killed, maimed, or injured. And the number of Igbos that ran away from the north and the west down to Igbo land was over 1 million that period. That was the most deadliest coup in the history of the country. And today, the man that led that coup, Murtala Muhammad, is a national hero. His face is on our currency. An international airport was named after him.
No problem.
We had 7 major coups in Nigeria. All the coup plotters today are all heroes.
You get it?
Olusegun Obasanjo is an elder statesman, having been civilian president for 2 terms. Muhammadu Buhari, who led a coup that removed a democratically elected president, Shehu Shagari, today is an elder statesman, having been civilian president for 2 tenures. But the only coup that Nigerians will choose to remember is that of January 1966, because it justifies their hate for a certain ethnic group.
This world can be something.
You see, the Igbo man is not your enemy. He does not have any agenda. His only agenda is progress and development. So the earlier we start facing what is facing us in this country and leave the Igbo alone, the better for us.
We have to rise up.
According to the English of Dele Momodu, he said ethnicizing this protest is a big form of ingenious move. You should face what is facing you. Leave the Igbo man alone.
Jesus Christ.
Kedive melo madeja kolom nono. Kedive melo madeja kolom nono. Abo mo bombo ne weriku. Abo mo